I suppose we have to watch what we say now. Well, welcome everyone to another edition of Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. I'm a longtime fanboy and friend of today's speaker, our Meetup founder, Dennis Shiao. And Dennis is now the founder of Attention Retention, a B2B marketing agency. And today, Dennis is going to be talking to us about a subject near and dear to our hearts, B2B emails. Yeah, they're flooding our inbox. And so Dennis is going to help us kind of talk about nurture and drip and these campaigns and kind of some reality checks there. I understand, Dennis, you have some rants, but then you also, offer some solutions to those rants.
Yes, correct.
So as you listen to Dennis's presentation, feel free to chat questions. I'll try to track those. And then at the end, we'll do Q&A and take it away, Dennis.
Thanks so much, Rich. And yes, speaking of chat, before I share my slides, let's start with a little chatting, if you don't mind. So tell me, if you're so inclined, tell me in the chat if you're B2B, B2C, or both. And also tell me, do you have an email newsletter? And you feel free to drop a link or tell me what the newsletter is about. And if you don't have a newsletter, if you are planning to start one this year. Let's see, B2B, no newsletter. So, okay. I can understand why most people are B2B because that's in the title of this talk. No B2B newsletter for Margie. Okay, thank you for all your answers. Wow, lots of B2B people. All right, well, that gives me a good sense for who's out there. And I know there's plenty of recognizable names out there, and then a few I don't recognize. So thank you both, those who I know and don't know, for joining today. Here we go. Let me share my screen. And Rich, do you see, hold on a second, let me put my video back on.
I see you, and I see your slides.
You see my cover slide?
I see your cover slide and I see you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for both. Okay, so today, how to think about B2B email marketing in 2022. If you found us, you probably are a member of our meetup group, and you'll notice that to start off the year, this is our theme. You'll see a lot of talks. In fact, our next two talks, the presenters are here, are right here. Rich happens to be one in 2 weeks, and Brian Piper, who's also on, is going to be speaking a week from today. So you'll notice that January, February, all of our talks are how to think about X in 2022. We thought that would be a neat way to start the year. This is like a great time to think about what are we going to do this year, and maybe what are we going to do differently. So for email, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk specifically about B2B email marketing. I think B2C tends to be doing a little bit better job from some of these consumer brands, but B2B, I think I've got major problems with. So I'm going to tell you about some of the problems I have, but I'm not just going to rant. I'm also going to give a suggested solution on how B2B marketers might rethink the way they use email. So a little bit about me. As most of you know, or many of you know, I'm the organizer of this wonderful meetup group. I have been doing marketing since 2005. So what is that, 16, 17 years? But I actually have a technical background. So I have a degree in computer science. And my first job out of college was I was writing code. So not so much writing prose like I think I do today, but I was writing code. And I worked for an internet service provider. This was back in the days when you had businesses that were connecting our business was connecting your business to the internet, if you can believe that, at speeds of like 56K kilobits or a T1, 1.5 megabits. My company was eventually, or the company I worked for was eventually acquired by America Online. So I spent the mid 90s working for America Online, and that was a crazy ride back then. That they were public, and maybe it's kind of like working for Facebook or Meta before that became uncool. I ran and completed the 100th running of the Boston Marathon. That's one of the thrills and honors of my life. My one and only marathon. I only wanted
where
to.
do I go with the booster?
I only wanted to run one.
Oh, okay.
1 second.
So this is just the registration and consent form.
Okay. where was I? Boston Marathon. So I only wanted to run one marathon, and I happened to run the 100th running of one of the most famous marathons in the world. The story there is, if you're a runner or a marathoner, you might know that Boston is qualifier only. So you have to run a qualifying time in order to even get in to the Boston Marathon. But the lesson in life here is it's not what you know or what you can run, but who you know. So my sister worked at the time for Ocean Spray, which was one of the corporate sponsors of the Boston Marathon, and she was able to get me a spot into the marathon. So I trained for it, ran it. I finished the marathon in under 4 hours, so really proud of that. I worked my entire career in full-time roles and just went out on my own in 2018. So I call myself the accidental freelancer. Lastly, I'm super passionate about personal branding. I think I've done some talks about that, and that's something I'm happy to talk to you about if you are looking to enhance your personal brand this year. You probably know how to find me, but you can also find me on Twitter at the handle there. Let's see. So what I'm going to talk about, so Rich, if you can confirm, do you see the image? I had some issue in the past of the images rendering.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can see the guy.
You see the image. So this is an image of me a few years ago when I had more hair. The expression here is, I know that B2B email marketing is broken because I'm the recipient of a lot of B2B email marketing. I happen to get myself on certain lists. Certain times I've opted in. Other times I did not, but brands are emailing me. Sometimes I'll go to like a virtual event that's multi-sponsor. So I register, the organizer distributes contact information to the sponsors of the event. So suddenly I have these best friends emailing me saying, we've got some great content for you. And I just think this is pretty darn broken. It's not really helping any of these brands to be emailing me out of the blue for something that probably I don't need. But I'm going to tell you how you might do it better if you're in B2B. And I'm also going to first show you some more of why it's wrong. Because I do think it's important if you're going to do better to deeply understand what's wrong in the first place so you can avoid those wrongs going forward. So first, let's consider how my email address is acquired, or in other words, how are all these B2B brands getting email addresses? Number one, I downloaded a white paper. So in some cases, I am downloading white papers in order to do a client project. So like I am reading a white paper in order to be able to write content that might relate to it. So by the nature of my work as a consultant, I'm downloading white papers and filling out the registration form. Or I attended a webinar. There's just so many of those these days, as we all know. I even attended an in-person conference. So I think right now in-person is cooling off a bit as we assess what's happening in the world. But I attended Content Marketing World in Cleveland last year. So of course, when you attend an in-person conference, some sponsors might get your contact info, or you visited a booth and you have your badge scanned, right? Maybe this might be more prevalent in the past, but with more privacy regulations, a lot of this is probably not permitted anymore to purchase my name or contact, or just go to the web and scrape it. I mean, I guess if my email address is out there, it's not the worst thing that, if it's publicly available, it's not the worst thing that someone found it. But here's the problem. So this is all the ways, and there's probably many other ways on how we get our email addresses acquired by a business. But here's what happens next. So think if you put yourself in the shoes of the B2B marketer at a brand that has an email list, and I've been in there. I've been there many times. You need to do something with with your email list, because if you're going to hit your goals this quarter or this year, you need to convert a percentage of your non-converted customers, your prospects, into opportunities and customers. So the most typical thing today, or in the past, maybe less so today, but it still happens today, is we have the power of marketing automation. These are the systems like Marketo, HubSpot, Eloqua, etc. Powerful platforms, and they let you set up these things called drips or nurtures. So it's like, got a list of 1,000 names, let's automate sequences to them. We'll measure all the opens and clicks, and we can even do this. I'm not sure how many people do lead scoring these days, but we can score the leads. We can say click to this page is 5 points. A click to our recruiting page is -2 points. Get the idea. At some point, you're scored high enough that it's handed over to, say, a sales development rep. That's what SDR stands for. So now the sales development rep starts contacting me. Or I'm subscribed to a quote unquote newsletter, and I'll tell you why I'm using air quotes. So the reason this is all happening, I think I gave away the answer when I first started. Oh wait, what happens next? Okay, so then the next sequence, I already talked about this, is this technology tracks everything. So we know that Todd opened an email, Rich clicked on a link, we got a nurture sequence to get Rich to register for our next webinar. That's probably one of the most miraculous things a nurture program can do, because I don't believe nurture programs do a whole lot. But you're essentially, the goal here is move people down the sales funnel, right? Get them more qualified. And then eventually you might get somebody to raise their hand and say, I want to talk to sales, I want pricing, I want a trial environment. In reality, my belief is that of the 99% of all these drip nurture and drip campaigns out there, 99% don't work. And I speak from experience in saying that I get, as the recipient, I get more annoyed than anything, meaning the brand sending me these nurture sequences, and you can easily tell when it's a nurture sequence. First thing you could do is check the footer and look for an unsubscribed link. You can mouse over it. You can even see what marketing automation platform they're using. I get more annoyed with the brand than anything else. And I'll tell you why in a moment. And I will remember brands, like if I were to come research a category years later, and a particular brand is now part of the solution set, I will actually remember that they had emailed me years ago. I guess I hold grudges. Okay, let's move on. And I've been behind this, so I'm guilty as charged. I've been in some jobs where I did content marketing, but I was responsible for some of the demand gen. So I set up Marketo, I set up these tracks, the lead scoring, and from maybe towards the end, you can share with us if you've successfully done this in a B2B business and you use nurture to drive opportunities and sales. But I've never had them work, and by work I mean you get very low opens, very low clicks, and I personally have not had a case where email nurture led to an opportunity that developed. So I think email nurture, so here's for Todd and Rich, here's my rant. I think email nurture is a completely false narrative. The fact that we can guide users down the sales funnel with these nurtures and drips, I don't believe it. Even if we believe we have really great content on our website and we can craft these awesome email sequences, I don't believe it works. And I don't believe we can use this automated sequence to nudge users into a buying decision.
You'd put nurture in air quotes. It's oxymoronic.
Yeah, it's not very nurturing, right? It's like, the opposite of nurturing. So if it's like a parent nurtures their child, this is being a really bad parent. It's being a parent that's like out after hours, the kid's at home with no babysitter nurture. How was that for a rant? Okay, so here's why I think it's wrong. I believe that during any 5-year period, so let's say you're in the market for construction management software, whatever that is. I'm just making up a category. During any 5-year period of all the prospective buyers out there, any given buyer will be in market for construction management software about 3% of the time, meaning there's a very short window when they're actually actively needing a construction management software and they have the budget and the authority to do it, infinitesimally small. All the other time, they're not in the market for your construction management software, but maybe if you provide them good content, they will be interested in your content and your brand will come along for the ride. So that's the main reason I think this email nurture doesn't work, because most people on your list are not in the active buying mode. those that are, I mean, there's a topic of another talk on how to effectively manage people who are in your funnel and in the current shopping process, but most aren't. And that's why an email nurture is not going to get them to all of a sudden say, oh, actually, yeah, I am in the market now. That just doesn't happen. So I think most of you are familiar with the concept of content marketing. If you take a content marketing approach, which means you're giving them information and insights to help them, independent of the product you provide, you're helping them answer key questions. You're telling them the solutions to what keeps them up at night. Has nothing to do with your product. Then you're building credibility and trust so that short window of time when they are in the market for construction management software, you might be the brand that they think of first. That is somewhat what content marketing is all about. So let me show you some examples. Some of these are older examples and some of these are very timely, like this one I just got this week. Happy 2022. I'm trying to remember who was this brand. I try to keep the brands out so I'm not shaming people publicly, but you'll see one MarTech brand, they ran a summit in Q4. So there's all these online events. These are not events necessarily that are going to compete with my Netflix time, meaning I'm not going to go out and seek out these events because they're managed by a B2B brand and they probably have their own customers and they're talking about their own products. But you see what I have circled here. They want to inspire me with the latest episode. Oh, there we go, link building. Latest episodes from our link webinar building series. I don't recall if this brand I opted in or not, but I'm really not interested in, maybe I'm interested if I happen to be on a project that relates to link building right now. Maybe I'm interested, but I'm not. I'm also not in the market for software related to what this company probably sells. So this is just, I would usually ignore this, but I'm just using this one as an example. Got a couple more examples. Very similar. Happy New Year. But here's your gift from us. We pulled together a list of the top webinars that we produced. It's going to help you with your data strategies, techniques, and tools. Let's cut to the chase, folks. This is really just them promoting their content. And the Happy New Year is frankly, is ungenuine. If you really want to wish me a Happy New Year, you know, and plus they don't really know me, but this is just a promotion of their content. What was this one? So I attended a virtual event from this brand. I'm not going to name the brand. So sometime in middle of last year, the brand starts sending me emails. So it's like Fromline was from the brand. Okay, I kind of get that. I registered for your virtual event, so now you're following up. Here's a key indicator for me on, I guess it's not against the rules per se, but it makes me suspicious. When a brand gets my email address and then, so they'll send me emails from the brand, but then they're mixing up the from line. So now all these different people from the brand, so they use a real person's name. It's probably like a fake from address so that it goes into some shared inbox. So this one came from the chief revenue officer of this brand. So let me repeat, I registered for the virtual event. The brand was following up. Now the chief revenue officer is following up. And I've had some brands where they just vary the name so that all of a sudden I'm getting, and you look at the from address, you know, when you're scanning your inbox, you look at the from address, I'm getting these random names that I never heard of. I mean, frankly, that gets me to open the email because I'm like, who is this? And then I see, oh, it's the brand that I gave my email address to. That just is not helpful for a future relationship between me and this brand. They got my email address and now, you know, the demand gen team is like, we need to nurture Dennis. And Dennis knows that, you know, our usual from line's not working. Let's mix it up. Let's send it from this new guy or gal. So I don't like that. Another rant. This is just some high-tech product. They're sending me an email. So this was one I remember I opted in. I gave them my email address, and all they're using email for is to promote their upcoming webinars to me. This one's like a year old, so I'm not interested. This might be the last example. This one is getting close. Getting close meaning they've packaged this up in a way that appears like this could be some useful content for me to check out. Like in general, I might be interested in some of these topics, but guess what? You see the button, make the call, start converting. It's just their own content. They're just promoting stuff to me, which is their recent blog posts. I would have a lot more, the brand would have a lot more credibility to me if they were taking me off to other, not their own content. Like they're curating content that they think I would find useful and they're sending me there and it's not their website. That would be more of a thumbs up from me. Just check the time. Okay, so let's discuss what did those emails have in common. It's all about them. How many of those emails did I feel like they were in my corner? None. It's their content, it's their webinar, it's their offer. And again, we go back to the beginning as to the why. It's because their marketing team has a directive to move this email list, this email list along the sales cycle. Remember, my premise here is that most people on your email list, they're not in the market to buy your product just yet. Even if they had budget and authority, they might not have a need to switch out software X at this current time because they have an existing solution that even though they might be frustrated with it, maybe they're on a 2-year commitment or a 1-year commitment. So they're not in the market for your product. So are you really providing any value if they're not in the market for your product on promoting your webinar, your blog posts, and your white papers? Okay, I might be wrapping up my rant here. So, and this might seem a little inauthentic because I'm going to talk about my own newsletter. So I'm not trying to say here that this is the solution, but I am giving you an example of something that I did at a personal level. So I have a newsletter that comes out every Friday, and it's called Content Corner. The idea here is to curate content about marketing and to just be useful to marketers. Is actually closely connected to this meetup group in that this gets into the whole rented versus owned land discussion. But on meetup.com, if you didn't know, I can message you. So you might see messages for new meetups, or you might see one from me specifically that I composed and I said, check these meetups out. But I don't have access to your email address through the Meetup platform. They do that intentionally because if I could directly access your email on meetup.com as the organizer, I might not need the service. I could just take you guys with me. So I started this newsletter in 2018 as a way to have my own channel to reach Meetup members. And so originally it was a way for me to send additional emails about some of the meetups that I could send to you outside of the meetup.com platform. And side note, if you're not a subscriber, if you just Google Content Corner newsletter, it should come up and you can subscribe if you wish.
I just put it in the chat. I just put it in the chat.
Thanks so much, Rich.
Yeah. Well, I get residuals. I get like a penny for every one.
Yes, we have an affiliate marketing arrangement. It's paid out in beers. The reason I bring this up is because, well, let me state something else first. So I went into this whole thing just as I stated as a way to reach Meetup members, but and at the time I was still at a full-time role. Since I went out on my own, this newsletter has been useful in a couple of ways that directly tie to my business. It helps potential clients see how I communicate. So you can see all my writing and how I package stuff up. It's even helped in some projects where I'm a consultant with a client and I've been able to propose to them doing their own newsletter, and I show them this as an example. But the reason I use it in this talk is because I think B2B brands can think about a personal newsletter approach to their email. And so let me explain further. Okay, let me just explain. So other things about the newsletter, it's very much about featuring interesting content, and I like to feature other people. This is something that I think B2B brands should consider. Feature content that you curate that's not your own, and call out people in the industry, even your competitors. You can surprise them by like giving them a shout out in your newsletter. Why not? it's going to build trust. So my newsletter is all about, I will sometimes sprinkle in like a link where I mentioned or they featured me, but it's mostly about providing useful content to my audience of marketers. And you'll see here, I called it Content Corner, and like every section has the word corner in it. So I have around the corner, Twitter corner, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So here's the content marketing approach. So for those of you who are doing content marketing at your job already, it's probably not difficult for you to transfer that approach to your newsletters. First thing is you must think always about your audience. I had a neat trick. I wasn't really strategic. This was kind of like a random thing I did, but it really works out well. I wanted a really short form for Content Corner. So it was name, email address. I didn't ask for company. It was like name, email address, and a favorite marketing blog, which I think is not mandatory. But people who answer that, or maybe it is mandatory, people who answer that tell me it tells me so much what they say. So some people will say like Ann Hanley or Content Marketing Institute or what have you. It helps me understand, and some will say I don't have one yet. So that might mean because I do have people who are on my list that are not marketers. I have some friends that are not marketers. So the answer you give there helps to qualify to me what marketer you are just by telling me what your favorite marketing blog is. Another approach is to promote others over yourself. So I always like to feature some person on Twitter. So it was that Twitter corner area. And I like to surprise people by saying like you were featured today. So I think it spreads good karma into the world, and it really helps people like even remember you, the fact that you featured them, and then other people who see you feature others may respect you further for being generous with attention. Like I just said, be generous with your attention. Oh, here's a key one. Provide a unique point of view. So almost all of the examples that I showed you earlier were re-promoting stuff that's already out on the brand's website. Like even maybe a copy and paste from the introductory paragraph of the blog post. So you slap the copy and the link. Your email can become much more valuable if you provide a point of view, like a perspective from your company or even an executive or a thought leader inside your company that's not available anywhere else. So I do this, I don't have a screenshot, but I always intentionally write a somewhat meaty introduction to my newsletter, Content Corner, and that's not taken from anywhere else. It's not like I've taken a blog post and I copy and paste it in. I always do something custom for each issue because I know my audience will start to appreciate that they can only get that perspective from me in my newsletter. Another example of this is if you're familiar with Ann Hanley, she has a newsletter called Total Anarchy, and she has a very I think I might have learned this from Ann, very meaty intro, which you're hearing, and maybe Rich, you could dig up the link and put it in the chat. It's a piece of Ann Hanley-ness that is only available in her newsletter. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very valuable. Last thing is you give value and it's going to come back to you over the long term. That's like, and again, this is a mindset shift. If your job title is director or manager of demand generation or lead generation, it might be hard for you to take this approach because you're ultimately measured on how you can drive and influence opportunities and revenue. So I get it. In some ways, what I'm telling you here is not going to help you advance that goal if that's your job. But I would ask yourself, if you have that role, is your email helping you? To what extent is your email helping you drive opportunities and revenue? So maybe if there's a content marketing person on your team, you can take this approach with your email to your list or a portion of your list. Okay, so here's a few other things you can do. So this is where you can take things that I'm doing in my personal email, personal newsletter, and apply it to your B2B emails. The first is put a real person's name in the from line. So the idea here is you could, okay, let me skip to the end. So you make your newsletter a thing. A thing means it's got a consistent from line and or a consistent frontline that is a real person in your company or even a thought leader. So let's say you have, let's say I'm back to the construction management software company, and you have a sales engineer who is very well known in your industry. She even is helping close deals because she's so well known. Make the newsletter from her. She can help come up with a name, and the personalized greeting, even though if she doesn't have time to write the greeting, marketing can maybe ghostwrite it, but it's going to have her name on it, so she should probably review it. You would provide exclusive content that can't be found anywhere else. Now, of course, you can take that exclusive content in your newsletter and then republish it later on your website, but make it exclusive in the email first, for the first time. Like it will only be seen first in the email, and then promote others in your industry. So at the very end, I'm going to show you an example of something that kind of checks all these boxes. No, not at the end. I'm going to show you right now. So this is a software company called Zuora. You see in the upper left, Tien-Tso is the CEO of Zuora, and so they provide a SaaS billing software. So they allow SaaS companies to automate the billing of their SaaS offering. And Tien, the CEO, has generated a lot of thought leadership around this whole label that he calls a subscription economy. And he has a book that he published a few years ago that I think has subscribed in the title. I forgot the name of the book, but essentially he's built in the same way that Terminus built a brand around Flip My Funnel. Sangram Vajre, I hope I pronounced his name right. Sangram built an entire brand around Flip My Funnel. Tien and Zuora have built a brand around the subscription economy, and I happen to get on their list. And this was sent out, I think, you see, so in the upper right, you see it's Saturday. It was sent out on a Saturday morning. So that's another interesting tip. Like, you can send your emails out when no other B2B brand is, and that's an opportunity. I think a lot of people are afraid, like, we got to stick to Tuesdays and Thursdays because they're afraid that they're afraid that if they don't and the performance doesn't do well, then they're going to be blamed for picking the day. But it's different times now, and everyone's reading email all the time. I think, like, Saturday, people are probably checking their phone, even for their work email. So anyway, this is sent out on Saturday mornings. You'll see what I'm showing you here is like a headline, subhead, and content. So even though Tien's marketing team might be writing this for him, I bet he's got some say in it, and I'm almost certain he's reviewing this before it goes out. This is a unique perspective from the CEO of a subscription billing company that I can't get anywhere else. So I like hearing from him. So this is a great, like an executive at a B2B brand providing me, and this is pretty meaty. So I'm showing you the first two paragraphs, but some editions of Subscribe Weekly go down multiple pages. So we're talking like long form blog post using email to reach your audience in a way that email is exclusive. Now, of course, Zuora might be taking this and repurposing it as a blog post, but it's getting its world premiere via email. So this was an example that kind of checks all the boxes of what I just said. This is an example where a B2B brand is doing a very nice job with email. Was that my last slide? Okay, that was my last slide. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Dennis. And I've been chatting some non sequiturs and related reading, carrying on with Todd as well. So while folks, if you have a question, I'll just look on the screen, either use the hand raising on Zoom or just butt in or chat the question. I'll toss out the first question, Dennis.
Sure.
When you open with your rant about, nurture by and large, what 3%, and you made up that statistic of the folks you're nurturing, they're not in a moment of buy, and yet you're nurturing, or I said needling them, right? How do you couch that and counter that against, hey, I'm a marketing automation vendor. I've got this gee whiz great email system for you, and it's got lead nurturing, and it's got scoring, and it's got all these bells and whistles, and like these are real things with Eloqua and now Adobe's purchased Marketo and whatnot. What are the use cases for those then?
Oh, okay. So your question is if like these capabilities in marketing automation software, if I'm kind of ranting about it, then how can we use these systems instead?
Yeah, what is the use
So,
case for email nurture then if
so
it's
I
not?
think you can still use these systems for account-based marketing. So I frankly am not an expert in ABM, but ABM is a place where you are using intent data and other tools to identify who is in market. And that's a case where if they're in market and you're connecting with them genuinely and have a solution to what they are in market for, then you can certainly use these automation systems. And I know there's a whole separate category of ABM platforms that kind of work hand in hand with marketing automation, but that's the place where you can use these nurture flows, if you will, and like measure the amount of impact you're making at the account level.
Got it. Okay.
So when you're talking about that, I was not with you. I'm like, what you're showing, what you're talking about is not a problem inherent to the marketing automation platform or email marketing in general. It's really just crappy marketing is the examples. And I was putting the blame on the marketer and not the platform, because I have seen marketing automation work, both from segmenting, both from segmenting messaging, particular audiences, particular industries get this message, and other industries might not even get an email until we have something for them next month. So there's the drip campaigns, and then there's the nurturing. And in B2B, I had a sales guy told me once, he goes, we sent out this direct mail campaign, love direct mail. So a direct mail campaign gave a 30% off coupon and nobody bought. And he goes, and he scratched his head, he goes, we realized that nobody's going to buy until they need to buy. And it's like, it's B2B. You're not going to convince somebody to buy just because you can give them a discount if it's not something they need today. And you're totally right about only a certain subset of the market is in play at any given time. The trick for a B2B marketer is to stay top of mind so that when they are in play, they think of you, because so often they're, it's like, oh, these guys look great, I'm going to remember them when, next year when we do this campaign, or we need to, that's on our CRM is on our list next year. This looks pretty, in our 2022 plan. We're gonna, we'll look at them, and all of a sudden it comes around time. It's like, who was that company again? If you even remember. So staying top of mind is so critical. So your content, when you were talking about these nurture campaigns are crap, I was thinking, and you're saying content marketing is the answer. I don't see this as you came back around. They're not two different things. You should be providing useful content that's not salesy if you have a nurture newsletter. And so which can be totally created and done on your marketing automation platform, that also allows you to segment your messaging if you serve different industries or have different products. So in the end, I was 100% back on board with you, and then the other thing is drip campaigns have their place. I download a white paper, drip out over the next period of time, useful information that's tied to that concept. Not salesy. You might get salesy in the last one or two to see if maybe they are ready to buy, but they're obviously not ready to buy. Then the goal is to put them into a long-term nurture newsletter.
Well, my comeback to you, Todd, was I've never seen it. Have you seen a case where there's a nurture or a drip campaign that provides useful info rather than just trying to get you to click on their content? I've never seen it.
Yeah. I run a newsletter for a client that it's client projects. There's nothing salesy about it at all. Every now and then there might be like a free ticket giveaway, it's a sporting event or a concert or whatever. So they get people to click on that. But it's nurturing and staying top of mind. And it's also kind of interjecting in the different types of things you do for clients, but there's no sales call to action. You need this, do you need this call now? There's never any of that. Another client, it was B2B, but it was selling to education, to teachers. And it was really, some industries or B2B feel a lot more like B2C in the way they communicate. I used to sell to individual photographers, professional photographers, and they acted a lot more like a consumer than a business when you're messaging to them and when they interact. But they did very salesy emails, that were, and they try to do, one for each, be targeted to a segment each quarter. And they were very salesy and they were very effective. And some people didn't mind that. It didn't bombard them continually, but it was staying top of mind on a regular basis. They would send something out with the coupon. Very effective.
Let me make one more follow-on point. This is something I probably should have put in the deck. There's two mindsets, and I think they're very different. Mindset one is a brand acquires an email address and then uses email to try to send subsequent messages. That's number one. Arrangement number two is a brand has a thing called a newsletter that they can show past issues, and the person asks to be included to receive that newsletter, where they're opting in, they're asking for your emails. In the first case, they're not really asking for your content. So those are two completely different mindsets and arrangements.
Yeah. And there's different laws in Canada and the US, there's different laws and that type of thing too. One client has a newsletter, and I bring it up and I lose the battle every time, but I keep trying, is the sales people can check a box in the CRM system that allow them to the newsletter. And I try to get that. It's like, no, let's not do that. Because they have to actually check the box for people in Canada. For clients, it's like, that's illegal. Don't do that. That's not even legal. It's not only is it bad marketing, but it's illegal. And so I keep fighting that battle. I keep losing, but it's a battle I keep working on.
Hey, Dennis, I would argue you don't have to get rid of the nurture to try this too. It's an ad, it can be an and, but it is tightly tied to the personal branding discussion you mentioned earlier. I think one is you need to have a commitment to do it long term. So you don't want to just do it in like 3 or 4 weeks you go out. This is kind of tiring. And then second is you need to have, I think it's easier if you have someone who has a personal brand to start it, because you want to grow the base quickly, as opposed to just anonymous of
course
company newsletter. It's going to be fun, trust us.
Yeah, good points. I think that's why it's natural to have someone a little more senior. So even if they don't have a strong online presence, they are known, like maybe it's the VP of sales or the chief revenue officer or the CMO. Whether or not they're have a strong presence online, they at least have the credibility of being the brand's chief marketing officer, and they're probably known to clients and prospects. So like, even if you ghost write their presence as the newsletter sender, that could be a good start.
And then you have to convince companies to take a little bit of risk, because it's not going to be very fun if they're like, check by legal 5 times and no. Did you check with everyone on the, you get this collaboration.
Yeah, for sure.
Collaboration, is that what you call that?
Yeah, whatever. Compromise content.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's
a tough one. If the brand's got a thought leader, and sometimes it's a CEO, so it's a younger company, probably the CEO founder maybe has some thought leadership presence. But if the brand doesn't have that, it's hard to like promote somebody in that position and say this is now the face of the company. And it generally isn't the sales VP, because they're trying to sell, and that just that job title will turn people off. I think, from a thought leadership standpoint, depending on the company and the personality, of course. That's a tough one, but it can be really valuable.
So
I see it. Go ahead.
Sorry. I actually have a question about that, because so I'm pretty new to content marketing, and I work for a company that the CEO has a lot of thought leadership presence, and we're trying to figure out how to get that out there. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, Dennis, about your thoughts on thought leadership, and how, if we're not sending people to our content, how do we position ourselves as thought leaders where we do have quite a bit of industry value and experience to give to our client base?
So my opinion, which is partially informed by experience, is that, so first of all, it's great that your CEO has thought leadership and wants to do more and advance his or her personal brand. My experience has been that if you're providing useful content to your audience, that's the key. And your audience may not always want to see your own content. So if you're always, even if it's like connecting with your audience, but every link goes to your website, they'll start to be like, are they really just promoting their stuff? Whereas if you mix in your stuff with other valuable things in the industry, it adds to the credibility of what you're sharing, and it, you know,
Cool.
elevates the trust that people have in you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's like a 50-50 kind of give and take sort of thing, right? Like we want to get our
Yes.
content out there, but we also want to show like, hey, like we're connected with other people, or
Yes.
we also find value in other people's thought leadership
Yeah.
as well. Okay.
It's almost like it's just hard to do, but it's almost like forget about your own content for a moment.
Mhm.
You are like the tastemaker, like maybe you're like a sommelier. You know all the great wines, and you're just telling people, try this wine, try that wine. And if they like it, they are going to gain respect for you. So if you're always finding stuff that they're going to find useful, that's
Yeah.
where you win. And there is value when sometimes it's your content and they come to your website and they'll think about you more. But the priority should be giving them useful stuff.
Mhm.
And I think some people have different methodologies. I think the one's called like the 4-to-1. For every 5 pieces of content you share, make 4 of them not your own, and then you make yours the 1 out of
wow.
5.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Well,
Yeah,
and
there's
do
a couple.
so. Go ahead, Todd.
Okay, yeah, there's a couple of references for you there. One was, this is pretty old. Andrew Davis is 311, I think he called it.
There you go.
Where you share 3 other people's piece of content, share 1 piece of your content, and then once you've done that, your fifth piece can be as self-promotional. But it doesn't need to be. If you're B2B, you might not even have a promotional, but you might be talking about your own event or something like that. So
Also,
that's one.
David,
The other, okay. Oh, the other one's jab, 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 right hook.
that's what I was going to say. Gary Vaynerchuk, Caroline and I hired him to do an Oracle presentation in Manhattan years ago when that just came out. And the idea is jab, 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 and then the hook is the ask. I don't know. There's a boxing thing there that doesn't work for me, but I've
recommended the book, and they thanked me for it. But it doesn't work for me either on the terminology, but the concept sure does.
Well, and I'd add, Veronica, for your thought leadership, do so, with a point of view that's informed by the expertise and experience, so that your CEO is perceived as a thought leader by the intended audience, right? And you sometimes, to kind of stand out, do something provocative, like Dennis's format today of the rant, like, hey, this is wrong, and here's why I think that, right? It's to get attention. And your audience might know a thing or two about wine, but do they know about this wine? And, be provocative in a way to engage, to then lead to a relationship that one day might be transactional, but it's not for a long time, depending on price point and sales cycle. And I think it's been a while, Dennis, since we've had a thought leadership meetup specific. I think, is any coming up?
On the topic of thought leadership?
Yeah.
Not that I know of, but I know some people that might want to speak on it.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one last question. I see an interesting one in the chat from Priyanka.
Yeah.
So the question is, why are social media channels like LinkedIn and Facebook adding subscription options to their feed? Great question. It's interesting that you noticed. My belief is that everyone's jumping on the email bandwagon now. So I'm less familiar. Oh, I think, I'm less familiar with Facebook, but on LinkedIn, you all probably know, or you might even have one, the fact that you can create a newsletter for your own personal profile. And in fact, over the holidays, it seems like most of my connections created one and then invited me to it. This is a feature that existed, I think, early 2021, where essentially, I think you create the newsletter, you name it, you can invite selected connections to it, and then you then publish a long form article on LinkedIn. So this is different than the post, but it's an article. And I think you can mark it as newsletter, and it automatically gets emailed to your subscribers. And then I think people who opted in on LinkedIn get a notification saying, Rich just posted his newsletter. So I think all the big platforms are wising up that email is a thing, and that it's a way for both businesses, personal brands, and this whole creator economy to have a relationship with their audience via email. Twitter, you might know, acquired a newsletter company called Revue, REVUE. So Twitter's gotten on board too. Certain people that create a newsletter in Twitter on their profile now, opt into their newsletter on Twitter. So what is my point? So the why is that I think the platforms see email as a valuable channel to an audience, and it's something you might want to consider doing it, but going back to, some of us know Joe Polizzi, founder of Content Marketing Institute, make sure you're not putting all of your eggs in your basket into like LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, that feature might go away. You want to also build your own email list that you can manage, that you own.
Yeah. I think, Dennis, you hit on something. I think it's in response to Joe's assertion that you'd be careful about building your house on rented land. I think the houses are like the rented land, the LinkedIns of the world are like, wait a second, you can build this, you could do subscribing on our platform here.
Yes,
and so they're building
exactly.
this feature functionality to address that, but be careful.
Yeah, and it's also in response, there's like a company that got a lot of hype last year is called Substack. People are launching paid Substack newsletters, and a lot of media personalities have left their full-time jobs to have all of their income be based on a Substack newsletter. So a lot of what the platforms are doing are in response to platforms like Substack.
Good. Well, we're just at about time, unless there's one other quick question or comment for Dennis. If not, I've chatted his Content Corner newsletter in there. I want to thank you, Dennis, for your presentation today, and everyone for your participation. And I know there's a lot more meetups coming. I think you've got one, every week in January, right?
Yeah, every same time, same place, Thursdays at noon Pacific.
Real good. All right, thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Dennis, that was fun.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.